All right, I call this November 19th, 2025 Finance and Resource Committee meeting to order. It is 4:07 PM. I'll now call the roll. Liz?
Here.
And Jason here. Moving on to B. I move to approve the minutes from the October 15th, 2025 Finance and Resource Committee meeting.
Second.
All right, and I'll take roll. Liz?
Yeah.
Jason? Yes. 2A, public comment. Is there anybody in the room who would like to make public comment? Please.
Yeah, my name is Stephen Ostrenga. I live at 1190 Kavanaugh Place. I've been in Tulsa for 16 years now. Got a child at East, another at Longfellow. The reason I'm here, and I know you guys are evaluating the solar, putting photovoltaics on the schools. I've been in the space for the industry for 20 years, and I would look at it not as a sustainability lens, which is great, but economically, it is a great investment. You get a return on investment for that apparatus. So I strongly, and I, for what it's worth, with this district for 8 years now, I'm on the city sustainability committee. So I've done all the numbers for the district in the past, showing paybacks between 6 to 8 years, IRRs, about 10 to 12%. So I'm here to support that.
Thank you very much. I think first public comment we've had in 2025. So welcome. All right, anyone else? Hearing none, we will close public comment and move on to 3A, October financials.
Scott was not able to be here for this meeting, so we do have a video from Scott. We able to play it? Oops.
Sorry about that.
Hi there, today we are reviewing our October 2025 financials. As the board and community probably know, October is a very busy month for school districts. In October, the state finalizes our state aid, which allows the school district to then finalize and approve a tax levy. Generally, most school districts, including ours, in October then update their entire budget to reflect those things. We did that as part of the budget adoption on October 27th. However, we will be updating the budget again in the next several weeks to align with the teacher pay increases that were approved by the board on November 10th. So I just want to point out that as part of this budget presentation, this reflects the approved budget as of October 27th, which did not include the additional teacher pay that was approved on November 10th. Our salaries and budgets are trending below this will change when we complete back pay and the new budget's approved. I would still anticipate that we will be on budget, but we won't be trending below budget. Here's our revenue summary. Traditionally, or actually always, through at least December, we received very little revenue. Here you can see that's reflected. Through the end of October, we have only received about 3% of our total budgeted revenues. Again, our property tax and state aid, we don't receive until the winter. Here you can see in graphic format, last month on the left-hand side, this month on the right-hand side, the amount of revenue we received is in orange. our budget is in blue, and the projection is in gray. So ever so slightly ahead of budget on projections, but again, it's not material and so little revenues through this point. Here the scale's just a little different, so you can see where we've received our revenue. We're a little bit ahead of pace on state revenue, slightly behind on federal revenue. Again, these things will sort themselves out, and we've only received 3% of all revenues to this point. On the expense side, again, we're right on pace, a little bit doing better than budget, as I mentioned, but that will adjust as we adjust the budget and get everyone's pay updated. But you can see overall, our expenses have been projected to be nearly 22%. We're right at 21%. We're trending below what we would anticipate on salaries and benefits, and ever so slightly below on other objects. This is an indicator to me that we have got our spending in a more predictable place than we did last year. You might remember last year, our other objects were very hard to predict. Now it looks like we've dialed in our predictive metric, and we are pacing more like we would project. Again, what we're looking at here in the orange is our actual, in the gray is our projected, the blue is the entire year, last month on the left-hand side, this month on the right-hand side. And what we're looking for is for the orange and gray to be close. So that being our actual versus our projection. On the expense side, if the actual is a little bit less than the projection, that's even better. That means we're trending below budget. This is just a blown up figure of that. Again, the projection here is in the orange, the actual is in the blue, and you can see with the note in the top left here, we're looking for these two bar graphs to be close. You can see on salaries, again, through October, we were trending under projection. Again, a lot of that is because of the back pay not being implemented yet. Overall, this is our current year compared to last year. Last year on the left-hand side, so this is last year through October, that's prior to through October, versus the current year through October. So the way to read this, at this time last year, through October, we had received $2.4 million and spent $27.5 million. This year, through October, we've received $3.8 million and spent $26.6 million. Again, slightly ahead of pace on revenues, slightly, behind pace, which in this case is better than expenses. But again, much of this is going to catch up when we provide back pay. And then finally, here's our projections. So again, we start with the prior year in gray, but what we really want to pay attention to is here's our current year to date. So this is the current year through the end of October. So if I'm just going to, for instance, look at our purchase services. Those are services we buy from outside entities. Through October, we've spent $5.39 million. Our system anticipates, based on the algorithm of our history, that we're going to spend another $15.2 million. That's over the remaining, would be 8 months of the year, which will yield a total spend of $20.6 million. We currently have $20.3 million in that budget. So if we don't make any adjustments and spending stays exactly with the algorithm, we would anticipate overspending in this single line by $333,000. Conversely, if we look at our non-capital objects, so that's supplies, materials, things like that, we've spent $1.1 million to date. We anticipate spending another $2.2 million, which will be a total spend of $3.4 million. We've budgeted $3.9 million. So in this line, we're projecting to underspend by $562,000. Overall, on revenues, even though we're projecting to have more revenues than budgeted, I don't anticipate that will happen. Our state revenues will even out, as will our federal and others. So we, for all intents and purposes, I believe we'll end up right on budget, not ahead of budget on revenues. And through this point in time, even though we're projected to underspend our expenditures, I believe that our salaries are going to catch up to our budget, in particular, once the back pay is approved and we go through and update all teacher pays. So we're in good shape through October. We're going to see some major shifts as far as total budget in November. So that will be a good dipstick test for us after we complete our November payrolls and have our budget updated.
All right, thank you, Digital Mr. Ecker. Anybody in the room have any comment? Yes, not really questions. Everything looked pretty much on pace, and I think he explained it well. All right. Hearing nothing else, let's move on to 3B, Director of Finance report.
So now we'll dive a little bit deeper into what Scott was referencing with the expenditures. A couple more things popped up this month that we did not see last month. We have done our first contribution to our HSAs for insurance for our employees. That is trending high. However, if we have more due to the timing of our payments this year versus last year, I think that's going to even out by the time the second payment comes around. So I'm not concerned with that one. In our 320s, which is our property services, that is trending about 300,000 over budget. However, that's due to the flood that we had in August. We've spent about 400,000. We do have a deductible of 100,000, and we've already received 300,000 in revenue. So the flood isn't great, but we only have a variance of about 100,000, even though this report is showing 300,000. For our 350s, that's our communications and HR. The 350s are trending high. However, when I analyze our HR and our communication budgets as a whole, they are not trending high. So we're not concerned there. Like Scott was saying, they probably overspent in the 350s, but underspent someplace else. So it's going to wash out. In our 430s, that is our instructional media. This is all the spending so far is coming from our common school funds. In previous years, we have under budgeted what we expected to get. For example, we would put in a budget of 200,000 and end up with 500,000. Unfortunately, we don't know the exact amount we're going to get until April. So then all of a sudden in April, there's a ton of spending between April, May, and June to spend that amount. This year, we believe that we made a better estimate based on historical amounts received. So we're spending now earlier in the year, which just means we're getting materials to our kids to use this year, rather than at the end of the year when now it's just going to sit on the shelf all summer. In our 550s, there was a new snowplow that was purchased for buildings and grounds. However, again, when I look at the buildings and grounds budget as a whole, they're trending under budget. So, and then in our 678s, when our I'm sorry, this is our copier leases that was throwing this budget off. When we asked our schools and our departments to put together their budget, they did it in the spring. And then over the summer, our secondary schools added a few more copiers to help with their efficiency for their teachers, but the budgets weren't updated. So we're going to take the next month or so, update their budgets, move some money around to account for those new copiers, and then that will be brought to you guys for approval when we bring the full budget. In Fund 27, the 240s again are those HSA contributions. The 340s our travel. So I looked at previous month spending, or I'm sorry, previous year's spending for October. And this year we had a payment of 92,000 on October 29th. Previous years that was made in November. So I believe it's just a timing issue. And then in our 370s, which are payments to non-governmental agencies, they are all grant expenditures. So we will be reimbursed for those.
Okay, well, thank you. Are there any areas of concern?
No.
That we think we should dig deeper into? No?
Mm-mm.
Okay. Um, yes, I think next month, I'm expecting a lot of things to shift around and change, and it may even be December or January before we get a fully, I'm assuming, fully accurate picture of where we're at after a little, we'll have to go up and then come back down.
Yes.
Um, and then hopefully we're leveled off. And is it accurate to say that you think you've got most of the items that are coded now into their proper buckets?
Mhm.
All right, great.
Yep. And as I go through this report, I'm able to find these areas that need to be updated, such as the copiers. You know, a change was made over from the initial budget to now, and we're going to address it now so that we don't have a department overspend, not realizing that their copier was going to cost more than they initially expected.
Right. Rather know about it sooner than later.
Yes.
Okay. Liz, do you have anything?
Thank you, Jess.
All right, then we will move on to the main event for the night. 3C, Energy Efficiency and Sustainability Subcommittee Report.
I could get off.
However you guys want to do it.
So with us tonight, members of the committee, Dave Nolstead, Lynn, of course, Bill Lawrence, Betsy Metzger, with us, she'll be presenting. Also Heather Deaton could not be here, she's on our committee as well. And then Steve can introduce himself. I'm on the committee. Yeah, okay, great. So, you want to begin?
I can pick it off. Other member of our team. Yeah, Chris Johnson, who's also a staff member, short social school district. And so it's been a nice, well-rounded group. So yes, I'm Betsy Metzger, community member. I have 3 children in the district and am an engineer in product development and sustainability manager at a local manufacturing company. So, like everybody on the committee brings some part of outside interests, I shouldn't say interests, not in the direct work, but in the concepts of sustainability and what we can do as a district. So our purpose as a subcommittee, is to advise and support the Wauwatosa School District on pathways and opportunities to expand energy efficiency, cost-effective clean energy, and priorities that are guided by principles of environmental sustainability to meet our school district's facility needs. I'll read you all of our goals here, but the highlights that we'd like to do cover are that we've been looking into how to lower the energy cost. One of the things that we found, and really want us to much that Evan and the team have been doing is found that they were already started on a lot of it. And a lot of good work. So just continuing to sort of challenge him and challenging what he's doing to make sure we're turning over all of the rocks that there are. Bringing in questions of with either work that is already being done or looked at for facilities currently or in the future, where can we be looking at renewable energy or other things that will reduce our carbon footprint here as a district. And then ultimately, how do we work together with schools and being an educational entity, and how can we bring this into what the kids are doing in the classrooms? I was controlling the slides, so sorry for where to look. Alright, so first, and I'll kind of go into these is the work with focus on energy. Then some demand monitoring that's coming up and building zoning and scheduling and small things there. So within focus on energy, just as a highlight, this is work again that Kevin did through the district, but we wanted to make sure to highlight here, looking at how much energy each of our buildings are using. And not surprisingly, so this chart on the left shows the highest usage schools, and this is the weather normalization rate. So it's how much energy is being used for the size of the building by square feet. And so with a newer building, you'd expect a lower number. Not surprising to anyone probably is that Wauwatosa East is our least energy efficient building. And on a rate, you can see it's almost 3 times what we have at Underwood. So that's just sort of highlights how much more energy efficient a new building can be compared to an old building. Now, obviously, when it comes to facilities, there's other things than just energy efficiency, but to be able to see it there, I think is really impactful. Because I know even, myself, I'm an old house lover, love everything about it. But when it comes to those drafty windows, I'm like, how much am I really wasting? These kind of numbers show us what some of that is. Though the one we'll highlight in the middle is Longfellow at 66, and that's one of the future slides. That's one of the target schools that Kevin and the team have been working on to really take a closer look at. We can go to the next. I don't know if you want to speak here. This is, I guess, an example of what goes into our utility bills, aside from efficiency or in addition to it, and how it impacts our bills.
Yeah, well said, thank you. So this is just a snapshot at a moment in time of the demand profile for East and West High School, 2 of our biggest consumption buildings. Part of the work we're doing in both how we operate the buildings, which is reflected by the EUI value that we saw on the previous slide. It's also how do we manage our demand profile, because we do get, if we hit a certain demand at any 15-minute moment in time, we're paying for that for a long time or for the whole month when we really didn't have to. If we could manage it better, there's a little blip on East right there, just about 9 p.m. at night for some reason. And then West, you can see these tell a lot of different stories. The first thing I see when I see the West profile is I don't like the huge spike up, everything turning on in the morning. I like to see something a little more gradual. But what I do like is that we're maintaining somewhat of a consistent profile throughout the day and not hitting any spikes. So overall, our goal there would be to get that huge surge down in the morning, level it off, and then through measures that we're implementing and new equipment and so on, get that overall near 500 kW profile down a little bit overall. That all impacts utility bills and the EUI value.
Well, that's probably one distinction between our residential bills and a utility bill for a facility like this is that peak demand. So at home, we're mostly just paying for the energy that we consume. But in an industrial building like this, that peak, as Kevin said, you pay sort of a 2-part rate. So the peak sets one part of the rate, and then there's a secondary part of the rate for how much you've actually consumed.
Right.
So by leveling it out, we lower that and see that savings every month. And that is controllable, even with everything we have by things like Kevin said, we stage when things to come on so that we're not putting this big surge. Because the way the utility looks at it, that surge, they want to be able to provide us the energy at any time. So they have to build the system for the biggest amount we're going to draw. And so then we pay a share based on that biggest amount, even if, half, you can see with all these spikes, on average, we're only taking about 400. So you'd say, we'll only build it for 400, but they build it for 6, and then we pay that down. So we can't knock it all the way down, but even just knocking it down a little bit, impacts every monthly bill.
Typically, that little blip is a chiller in a building, for whatever reason, on a shoulder month type of day. Just for a moment, we just need a little more cooling just for a little bit, and it goes on. Or if we can better manage that through our billing automation system, we could curtail that. In the case for East, though, East is one of those buildings the obsolete nature of that building, there are no sophisticated controls. So we really cannot do much about east whatsoever. It just is what it is, given the condition of it.
One other thing to note on that east especially, is if you hit your peak demand at 7 o'clock at night, so there aren't really, it's not even occupied, partly occupied. So like that's,
It can be reflected in the pool use, it's hard to tell, but it is puzzling. You're right.
right, it's just something to note, and if you don't have controls, you might not be able to do anything about it, but.
Well, west, we have a lot more controls and that, there's a lot more updates.
It makes sense you didn't have these conversations, you should join the committee.
Yes.
Go
to the.
So
go to the
the
next.
big takeaway is money can be saved. And
Yeah.
we're seeing that result.
So,
This is, it has been since he started that are really making.
and I think he's explained a few of those to us, over the course of the last few meetings about the different programs available and also the different ways to measure and be able. Understanding, what you're trying to describe with this slide is basically a sort of pricing on a Uber. You're like, they gotta have them, so if you need it, you need it right now, and you can't wait. You're gonna pay, higher.
That's the whole.
Yeah, and then I would say it's
That's
like if Uber then applied that surge price to you and only you for the rest of the month.
Oh, so the cost of
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, so
That's
something I didn't actually in the beginning there, so.
Yeah.
So that's a
You
big
know,
factor.
ours, I know where I looked, it's actually the price for us for the 12 months. And
For demand and then that yearly, right?
so then there's another part of it that they actually hold you to for 12 months.
And this really is the largest component of your bill.
Yeah.
Whatever your max is.
Hmm.
So if you can figure out a way to reduce that, you know, your payback is almost instantaneous.
The next slide, please. So, this slide and then the two previous, these were things that I actually developed for the secondary ad hoc committee to demonstrate the condition of the secondary buildings as well. This is the column on the left is our 2023 energy use intensity profile for all 14 facilities, and the one on the right is for 2024. Just some key takeaways that you'll notice. Underwood is our best performing facility. It had a little bit of an uptick in 24 to 44.1. But what I have noticed is that McKinley and Wilson are some of our better performing buildings as well. This is what I would expect. You might wonder why Fisher, being an old building, is performing well. When you look at the amount of how this building is used and everything, you would expect a lower EUI because it's not a school, it's not occupied as much, there's not as much of a load. So I would expect that to be a little bit lower. But it's an interesting thing to think about. When you look at Longfellow in the 2023, about halfway down, it had a 75.1 in 23. What's changed since then is the pool has gone offline. And now we're tracking almost 10 points lower at 66. So pools have a big impact on how much energy your buildings use. Part of that also are some of the strategies we put in place with focus on energy, the utility verification bill program that they have. Some of the strategies contribute to that lowering of the EUI. We are also we've enrolled all 14 buildings in 2025 incentive year for the same program. And we're expecting a lot of the measures we put in place in 24 to show some results in 25. And in particular, Longfellow, if we could go to the, one more thing I want to point out is the reason it's good to track this, and we input this data into Energy Star to measure it. Prior to 23, the district was not doing that. The reason it's good to do that for all the other ones we already listed is my point number 2 there for Lincoln Elementary. Lincoln's an outlier when you look at it being a basically new building, and it's not performing very well, and we don't know why. So we're working with some of our vendors now, putting in metering to verify our meters. And we're gonna implement a retro commissioning of the building systems. And all I can think of now is that when we're telling a piece of equipment to be off, it's not turning off. Those kind of things are probably happening in that building. So our goal is to get into 25, 26, get that EUI further lowered. And next slide, please.
What I just add to highlight is like a good example of where it does take active management of our facilities to actually get the sustainable benefits out of them. And so Lincoln was rebuilt with, the latest and greatest in heating and ventilation, and it has the controls, unlike East, which doesn't even have it. That building has it, but as a district, I don't say as a taxpayer, like we can't get those advantages if we don't have people actively managing it. So just as a recognition, some of the work that has to go in from the district on an ongoing basis.
Yeah, so efficient use of tax dollars for optimizing the use of the equipment, the investments, right? If we're not running it 10 hours a day or 12 hours a day, we're running it 8 hours a day, we're gonna save the life of that equipment and the wear and tear on it. And also, if we're watching this equipment and watching our air handling systems, we're getting a better handle on the indoor environmental quality of the spaces that everybody's in, and that can contribute to performance, or at least having an ideal area for people to do their work in. So this slide here is just another example of the things we're implementing. This is from our building automation system for Longfellow Middle School. It's hard to see, but that's the first and second floor plan. And then we have it broken out by zones. In 2023, or when this building was updated from the referendum money in 2018, it had been running on one schedule only. So all that investment in new equipment and systems from that 18 referendum, this system was put in, the automation, good stuff, but it was never broken down by zone. So what that means is that at night, when there's an activity in the gym, we were turning on the whole building for one event in the gym. Huge facility to do something like that. On the weekends, if there is an event in the cafeteria, you're turning on the whole building. So what we've done now is broken it out by zone. So now when there's an activity in the gym on a Saturday, we only turn the gym on and everything else stays unoccupied. We're expecting that EUI rating that we saw from 24 to go drop even further as a result of implementing this.
That's another area with the subcommittee and the members on. Chris Johnson is our scheduler for the rec department. And so having him on the committee or choosing to participate has given him some more insight to the impact of some things related to scheduling. He certainly at first is trying to accommodate all the groups that want to use space in our buildings, and the community using the schools. But helping to see this, we don't yet, or he doesn't yet have a process in place to, explicitly make decisions based on building heating or cooling or what's turned on, but just even having that connection and bringing more awareness to it is another part of the ongoing management in the district that can impact ultimately our energy savings, because as Kevin said, with the buildings, turning on an entire building like Longfellow, when you only need a part of it turned on, is a huge way that we can save energy in the district.
In addition to Chris, I want to point out our staff as well, our building leads. They're the ones that are actively scheduling, monitoring things. Kevin Hoyce, the district's operations coordinator, spends hours on this every day, checking stuff and working with our building leads. And that has to happen in order to master the basics, so to speak, before we can advance to anything else.
And I guess, the big thing on this is the savings that come in, they happen like real time, like there's no payback or anything. You figured it out and you just shut it off. there's no investment.
It's already paid back.
Yeah. It's just taking.
It's money in the bank, yeah. Next, please.
So, this is, so I'll say somewhat briefly touch on solar. This is an area that the subcommittee has dug a little bit deeper into. And did it from a fairly open, first leaning on what the Wauwatosa community, has already done. Heather Deaton, who's on our subcommittee, is also works with the city of Wauwatosa's sustainability committee, to just see what might a next step look like. As I said, first step in any sustainability work is efficiencies within what you're doing, but then we look ahead, what might be different ways. We've talked as a subcommittee about concepts like geothermal. We haven't gone too far on wind, but solar is one that obviously pretty quickly comes into the conversation. So we most recently, we've learned that there was an assessment already done with the 2018 referendum. We've had a fresh look taken with Arch Solar. They looked at our 4 newest buildings and then also West High School as a comparison. A few highlights there to consider is, and this was touched on during the public comment today, is the 10-year payoff per panels, and we'll have the next slide will go into a little bit more detail, is because they last longer than that. After that payback period is when you're essentially not paying for the electricity that you're then getting from those panels. In most cases, everybody thinks energy prices will continue to go up. No one's really predicting energy prices to go down. And so that's another consideration within that. The summary from the Arch Solar evaluation was first looking at the elementaries, which was thought the newest buildings might be the best place for them. One of the interesting things they looked at was that a project on all 4 of those schools would be about the same size as a project on West High School. So just something to consider in terms of magnitude. Now, not necessarily saying as a district in future thinking you have to pick between those, right? In the best case, there'd be a way to do all of the things. But just if we were to consider different scenarios and with a realistic mind towards the timing of finances and anything else, we recognize there could be some differences in what as a district we're able to do on the existing buildings versus teaming up with the post-secondary, or sorry, the secondary schools committee, and what they're looking at. So to the next slide, we wanted to make sure to highlight this today as an example, because the secondary schools are currently under review. And just to illustrate, the image on the left is where they've overlaid all the blue stripes that you see are solar panels on the roof. One of the things that they do in this type of evaluation is only put enough for the demand that they'd expect your building to have. You can see there are some spaces on the roof where there aren't panels. That's both to balance the size of it, but then also to avoid certain things that are on the roof that you don't want to get too close to. And the chart with the blue and orange that you see there, the orange being the initial outlay, and after you can see about year 10 is when that blue is all essentially avoided cost in electricity. The overall cost, just to give order of magnitude estimated for this, for a building like the size of the West, is about $2 million. Currently, there are still incentives. Again, some of those are phased out timing as soon as next year. And if we, let's say, we're able to start something today, and again, we're not proposing that we started today, but this is just a example. There are still $650,000 in incentives available, bringing the net cost down to $1.4 million. So just to give an example again, for illustrative purposes today, on what types of incentives and the magnitude of incentives that can come into play in a project like this. That's kind of where we're at, and also wanted to get that $2 million number out there to just start to put some ideas towards when we say something like this, like how much does it cost? Because it is obviously a fairly big building. Any questions on that?
I would just also say that, some other points that we learned were just the way that, in doing the solar, you get other sorts of advantages, like just the building performing, even though we just talked about the peak issue. You can use solar to help balance that peak problem, the energy use problem. So there's a number of different ways. Again, we're not proposing that the district goes solar, but we want to start to educate the district about what that one costs, and secondly, what advantages there would be in the long run for the district.
Would it also carry the advantage of, like, say, in the event of a long-term power outage, our buildings wouldn't necessarily have to go all the way down. They would be able to maintain critical systems because they'd be able to power themselves.
Great question. They could if that happened on a sunny day.
Okay,
And so that's, one of the things with the solar where we can size it for 100% of the load, but we would still be connected to the grid because, winter, or even just a cloudy day, we can't be fully reliant. We wouldn't be off grid per se.
So one correction on that. So when there's an outage, the solar shuts off. And
Oh,
it's
even that,
protect the-
okay.
protect the line and whatnot.
Yeah.
okay.
No,
Okay.
Unless you.
unless you have battery,
Right, unless you implemented some other longer term.
our price doesn't include battery storage.
Right, and I know those are probably just as much as the panels at this point, so.
It really comes into a lot, if you want reliability from your solar too, and to be able to go off grid, it's a lot more
Right.
expensive than two.
And I don't think the redundancy then, in that case, if, then that would necessarily,
And that wouldn't be
warrant-
one of the benefits that would
Yeah.
come from.
okay.
One thing,
So,
We recognize Steve here to contribute to this.
Please,
So a couple points, I've done this for 20 years and done a lot of systems throughout the country. So it's one point about storage, okay? So you can put a battery out there to store critical infrastructure, but putting your heads on a lot around the country, you can get grants because you could put a building to be a critical infrastructure for a city. So there's opportunity to get grants at the Fed level, okay? Those batteries, you can write off 30% of the battery cost. The Fed will pay you a check for 30%. Number two, this is a finance meeting, this is about capital investment, this is a CapEx expenditure. There in Wisconsin, you can find financial partners that will finance this for you. And you'll pay less per year than you do for your electrical costs now. And they will finance this for you, so you don't have an immediate outlay. That is you're in a finance meeting, that is a critical thing. Chase down.
few other things, the roof that they go on is pretty critical too. If you have an old roof, you really don't wanna be putting this on there. So you kinda wanna plan it out like a new roof, then you put this on if you have the time. Cause you expect them to be there, 40 years.
right, so we would probably want to focus on the newly done elementaries, if we were to do something like this, especially with literally run the gamut of options from the secondary ad hoc. We have no idea what we're going to do, so
Well, Eisenhower's got a roof. So we're just suggesting looking at.
It did, yes.
Considerations. Lincoln, we could share the whole solar piece of it. Lincoln also did not show up as a very good candidate, not only having us that with issues, the roof space wasn't the best.
wasn't ideal.
West, well, the reason we put West in this proposal was just because you could do one single building and there's some efficiencies in a single system over.
Right, I would imagine the install prices scale, if you're doing a bigger project, you're probably getting a better price point on everything.
Plus discussion, we wanted to get this out there because of the discussion about the secondary schools and how to.
And I think the idea is definitely worth merit and consideration in the overall.
We have not yet looked at potential financing, so that would be something, that would be worth looking at. But we also wanted to do some board education and community education about this and see if it's even worth us digging further into that.
the other consideration we have for the secondary school, is that tie into education and just that, while certainly students at any level, can learn about sustainability and benefit from having solar panels at their school or some type of renewable energy. Our district, doing more into the trades, and more of that education, there may be some easier tie-ins at the secondary school level.
So yeah, coming up.
So, coming up, our next steps as a subcommittee, we've got Craig Griffey, our shop teacher from Tosa East, coming to our next meeting. We're looking at possible connections into physics program and just what we can learn. We're taking again a sort of multifaceted subcommittee, not just looking into what technologies we can do, but how do we also bring in just the concepts into the education. And then, finally, more immediately, one of the things Kevin and his team are doing are going to request this 15-minute peak demand from We Energies. That's an additional level on top of what they've already gotten, which helps just again drill in a little bit closer to figure out where those peaks are coming from, ultimately use less energy, but also reduce our bills. Continue looking into other heating and cooling. Again, we presented solar today just as an example of something to be considered, but there are other technologies we as a subcommittee want to still keep exploring a bit further, particularly with the footprint that the school staff here. Continue to educate and answer any questions you guys have about sustainability, energy efficiency, renewable energy, and any questions that might come from the secondary.
The district is really lucky. This committee, which I'm getting a lot of yeses about continuing for another year, has got a We Energies connected person. Someone who's sustainability in the private sector and industrial. David has worked with Marquette University on their plan for geothermal and has geothermal himself in his house. And we're just really, really blessed with the heads that we have. Joe being in the rec department, which has really made a huge difference in what we can get done. But we just really wanted to emphasize, let you know what we've been doing over the last year, the progress that we're making, and have your input at some point when you have the time about how this could move forward. Would you like a learning session on something like solar for board members? With what, would you like more of this content about energy efficiency? Kevin's really got that. He's on the ball, totally got that. The big challenge with something like solar or other kinds of equipment is just the budget tightness that we're running in the district. And the unknown. I put a question after 2026 because I couldn't remember whether we need to start the projects by 2026 or by 2027. But the residential is ending soon, but we want everyone to know commercial is not yet. So there's still a little bit of time.
Okay.
So
I think it would be a good idea to give a brief update to the board as a whole. This was definitely worth the time for me. I think the others would likely agree, and especially anybody who's going to be trying to make decisions when secondary ad hoc presents. These are things that I don't know how you guys are going to merge things together, like the information sharing and whatnot, but I would expect some of this is going to be a little bit of wiggle room in what the projections are for those things, and this is potentially one of the things where we can get financial benefit from it long term, which makes paying the interest on any other sort of referendum a little easier to swallow. And also it carries other community values like helping reduce our energy footprint, our carbon footprint, and just being progressive on that energy sector as a whole. So I like it. I think whenever the board president would want to work it in. Liz, anything else to add?
No, thank you. This has all been very
Thanks, Betsy.
informative.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a couple of minutes before the next meeting is supposed to start. Do we want to just keep plowing on through quickly, or do we? I don't really don't know what to do here, Liz, so I'm asking.
I think we could make a motion to move these items to the December meeting, unless there's anything super pressing. I didn't think so. I looked at the slide. So I think, so I'll make a motion to move items C, E, or sorry, C, sorry, geez, 3D, 3E, and 3F to the December finance meeting.
I'll second that motion,
I am a yes.
and I am a yes. Motion passes. Last item, then confirm our next meeting date. I moved to, well, I guess we had to talk about the next meeting date first. Our typical day is the second Wednesday, third Wednesday. Third Wednesday would be December 17th. I've already got that in my calendar, so I'm good. If everyone else is good with that. 10 a.m. to noon. All right, that's the tentative plan. With that, I move to adjourn. May I have a second?
Second,
All right, and Liz
yes.
and Jason is a yes. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for coming in.